Once upon a time, our beloved continent was this beautiful tree of life that gave life not only to humanity, but to life in general as we know it. Invaders came to our beloved continent centuries ago, and they started messing with this tree of life that is Africa. We must understand the tree that was, the tree that gave life to the world. We need to understand what has been done to this tree to take it to where we have the Africa that is no longer the center of the world. When we understand what has been done to Africa, it makes it easier for us to strategize on how we can undo the damage, the destruction that has befallen our motherland, the African tree of life. I think it's clear that we understand for this tree to have issues. The issues are either issues above the ground, which is what they have mostly wanted us to focus on, versus issues below the ground, which are really the pivotal issues, the issues that they strategized to see to it that Africa and her children are forever defeated and dominated. Allow me to classify the issues, the reasons why this tree of life that is Africa is ailing. And I'm going to divide the issues between the two. Problems that are causing this tree to ail, but problems above the root, above the ground. And issues that are making this tree ail that are below the ground. Issues of the root. Quite often, we are focusing on the issues above the root, issues above the ground. Issues like the leaves and the flowers and the fruits and the branches that are falling off one season after another. Those issues like leadership, issues like corruption, issues like poor access to healthcare, poor education, poor infrastructure. Those are all issues above the ground. They come and they go. We change leaders every day in Africa. But tell me one African country that changed a leader and things changed. We might see some improvement, but fundamentally, nothing changes. This was all by design. Where we are lacking in our understanding of our Africa is the issues below the ground, the issues of the root, the issues that were predetermined by those who came to colonize Africa, those who came to settle in our beloved continent. Remember, when they came to Africa, the settlers, they found an amazing continent with everything and anything the world could ever need, well-established religious and educational systems. And they wondered, how on earth can we ever conquer such an amazing continent unless we come up with a strategy that will see to it that Africa and her children are forever defeated and dominated. I repeat, unless they came with a strategy that would see to it that Africa and her children are forever defeated and dominated. To start with, when the colonizers came to Africa, we didn't have the issue of color. Black and white did not exist in our languages. We were Africans. The missionaries were sent in with specific instructions to make the Africans believe that everything African was bad and everything European was better and more desirable. They put in motion a process of making us dislike that which was ours and go all out to embrace what the new invader was bringing to our beloved continent. I have to give it to them. They did a very good job at doing that. They hit us where it hurt the most, the mind. The missionaries taught us about white angels. The missionaries taught us about the devil who was black. The missionaries are white, like the angels. And that when we go to church, we must worship the white angels. And definitely want nothing to do with the black devil who looks like us. Subliminal messaging. subliminal messaging. That's where we began the self-hate, the mistrust of each other, the lack of appreciation, an idea that is coming from your brother, an idea that is coming from your sister, because we are taught to dislike anything to do with us. That, my brothers and sisters, was level one, number one level of destroying the African, the mind. Then they followed it with colonization, a systematic way of saying, now that we have made the African believe that everything African was bad and everything European was better, let's take it to the next level. So it is that they met in Berlin and decided to chop up our country, our continent rather. So it is they met in Berlin, Germany, at the invitation of the then Chancellor of Germany, Bismarck, specifically to come up with a strategy that once again would see to it that Africa and her children are forever defeated and dominated. They spent 4 months, 4 cold months in Berlin, Germany, from November of 1884 to February of 1885. And by the time they were done, our Africa had been chopped up into the tiny little countries that we see today. Countries that were intentionally divided in such a way that individually they will never survive. That individually they are easy to exploit. The whole purpose was to see to it that they can continue to exploit the rich natural resources that we were endowed with in our beloved continent. A united Africa is an Africa that is difficult to exploit. An Africa that speaks with one voice is an Africa that is difficult to exploit. So it is what they came up with, their strategy of 1884 during the Berlin Conference, is what gave us the Africa that we have today. An Africa that has countries like Benin, countries like Togo, countries like Central African Republic, Niger. As a matter of fact, all African countries. Then they turned around and said, okay, here we are. You are independent countries. Of course, during the Berlin Conference and during colonization, every one of those countries was controlled from those capitals in Europe until independence. When our Pan-African fathers began to say there's something wrong with this picture, we can no longer continue to be subservient in our own continent. So they began to push back. And this is what led us to get the fake independence, where we were given political liberation, limited political liberation to this day. But what they kept and never let go, which brings me to issue number 3 of the root, was the economic liberation. You see, you got to understand that when we were under colonization, the companies that ran the economies of all African countries were companies that belonged to the colonizer. If a country was colonized by the British, the majority of the companies that controlled the economies of those countries were British. If you were colonized by the Germans, German companies. If you were colonized by the French, French companies, and so forth. That, my brothers and sisters, they never gave up. They still continue to control the economies of their former colonies to this day. Let's go back and summarize where we are so far. The issues of the root. They messed with our mind. Berlin Conference. They divided us up, chopped up into tiny little economies that simply cannot survive on their own. And thirdly, in the name of giving us liberation, they never actually left our beloved continent. Economic liberation was denied the Africans to this day. If you go into any African country today, the majority of the employers are multinational companies from those colonies, former colonies, who never left at independence in the 1950s to 60s. The colonizers have never left Africa. Issue number 3 of the root. In the 1940s, They created the Bretton Woods institutions. The Bretton Woods institutions were created with the fair understanding that their success was based on the failures of the developing countries, the majority being in Africa. So it is the international monetary policies are skewed in such a way that African countries are forever going to be paying debt they will never finish paying off. The average African country as we speak today spends about 1/3 of their GDP on loan repayment. How can a country survive? It's all by design. Countries that have never defaulted on their loan repayment, and yet the rating agencies continue to give them poor ratings so that they can justify giving them high interest loans. We must understand the international finance system and how it is keeping their knees on the necks of the African countries. The international finance system must be analyzed, and we're asking those involved to give Africans a break, and that we must treat Africa fairly. We must demand that. Issue number 4 of the route: the international trade policies. You see, the continent still has 80% of its natural resources. Africa is the continent where the rest of the world is going to for their needs. Gold, check. Diamonds, check. Oil, check. Coltan, check. Copper, check. The list goes on. It's all in our beloved Africa, and the world wants it. The world wants our natural resources. Here is the problem. Going back to the Berlin Conference, the international trade policies make it very difficult for African countries to add value to our natural resources. Hence, as we speak today, the majority of the natural resources coming out of Africa leave Africa without value addition. Have you ever wondered, why is it that over 65% of the world cocoa beans come from West Africa, and yet it's only recently, past couple of years, that we started seeing a few factories manufacturing chocolates? It was all by design, thanks to the unfair trade policies. Have you ever wondered, why is it that we get coffee and tea from Switzerland? Have you seen the large coffee fields in Switzerland? A good portion of that is coming from our beloved continent, East Africa. Why are we not questioning the large quantities of coffee and tea coming out of certain countries when they are not growing that much coffee, when they are not growing that much tea in their countries? Why are these countries allowed to get away with relabeling African products as their own? It's all by design. The world trade policies that give a blind eye to atrocities that are being committed on our beloved continent. That's issue number 5 of the route. We must understand the international trade policies and how they're keeping Africans from creating the much needed jobs in our beloved continent. You take, for example, coltan alone. If we were to say every item, every microchip that requires coltan must be manufactured in Africa, that means that microchip in your cell phone, in your laptop, in our electric cars, the list goes on. That alone could create millions of jobs for the Africans, so we can no longer talk about unemployment for our youth. That alone. Have you ever wondered, if we were to say everything that requires chocolate must be manufactured in Africa, do you know how many jobs we could create? Those who are manufacturing chocolates outside Africa, all they're adding is water and milk. Do people even know that? Does the world even know that? Cities are built out of African cocoa beans. Does the world know that? Why is that being allowed? It's the unfair trade policies. I could go on and on and on about the natural resources out of Africa that are creating jobs for the rest of the world. That has got to change. And we African diaspora must understand it, appreciate it, and do something about it. Issue number 6. See, we all talk about, we want change in Africa. We want better health care. We want better education. We want better infrastructure. Well, guess what? No amount of money put into Africa will give us the health care we desire. Why? It's because the majority of the healthcare workers are outside Africa. Like I often say, there are more Ghanaian doctors in New York City than in Ghana, the country. There are more Nigerian doctors in Los Angeles than in the country of Nigeria. How then do you improve healthcare if there are no doctors? Let's be realistic, my brothers and sisters. This is a moment for you to stop and think. We can't expect quality healthcare to just happen out of nothing. We have to participate. The capacity that Africa needs to build the Africa that we want, to build a sustainable Africa, is in the diaspora. And that's you and I, my brother and sister. The brain drain that has occurred in Africa over the past 400 years must be reversed. There is no two ways about it. We have got to make a decision as the children of Africa in the diaspora. We must understand our Africa. We must understand the issues that are causing this tree of life that is Africa to be ailing to the extent that it is. The issues above the root and issues below the root of this tree. Allow me to summarize them, because it is important that we understand them. Because when we fully appreciate what is going on in Africa, we will stop being thrown a shiny object and run after the shiny object, while the real issues are in the opposite direction. 1, leadership. 2, corruption. 3, poor access to healthcare, poor educational systems, poor infrastructure. Those are issues above the ground. Those are the flowers and the fruits and the leaves and the branches. If they allow, or rather, if we allow ourselves to concentrate on issues above the ground and totally ignore the issues below the ground, which are, once again, the mind. By that I'm talking about the legacy of colonization and the legacy of slavery. The legacy that makes us believe we are inferior to others, and that what we do is inferior to what those from the Western world do. We must heal from the disease of the legacy of slavery and colonization. Our minds must wake up. Secondly, the Berlin Conference, and what that meant when they divided Africa up into the 10 little economies. China cannot go into the same boxing ring with Benin. The United States cannot go into the same boxing ring with Central African Republic. It simply doesn't make sense. It was all by design. Then the colonizers, who never left our Africa, they continue to control the economies of all African countries to this day. And until the African has control of our own economies, nothing we want to do is going to give us the Africa that we need, the sustainable Africa that we want. We must own the factories that manufacture our fabrics. We must own the brick plant that's making the bricks that we need to build our houses. We must build our own planes. We must build our own airports. We must build and own the railway lines and the trains. Manufacturing is where it's at. We must own the fundamentals of our economies in Africa. Sadly, the multinationals that go back to colonization have never left our beloved Africa. Issue number 3. Issue number 4, the international finance policies that disadvantage developing countries, the majority of those countries being in Africa. The international trade policies that are so unfair to developing countries, and once again, the majority are in Africa, and as we speak today, Africa is where everybody is going. All other parts of the world are going for their needs. And last but not least, the brain drain. Here, my brothers and sisters, you should own this. If we don't come together and speak with one voice, if we don't come together and realistically look at the issues that are causing this African tree to ail, we have no one to blame but ourselves. And so now I have described the issues, the causes for this African tree of life to be in the intensive care. I can tell you the solutions are easy. Once we understand what is being done to our tree, once we understand why this tree of life is not giving us the sweet, juicy fruits like it used to once upon a time, what this moment is calling for, my brothers and sisters, is for unity. Unity among black people. Unity of purpose. If we do not unite as black people, we will continue to be the most disrespected race on earth. You know it. I don't have to overemphasize that. The question I have for you is, are you happy with the status of black people today on earth? Are you happy with the world the way it is today? Are you happy living this world the way it is for your children, grandchildren, and generations to come? I hope. The answer is no. 20 years from now, your children and grandchildren are going to ask you, grandfather, grandmother, there were issues with our beloved continent Africa. There were problems with the race, our race, as black people. What did you do, grandmother? What did you do, grandpa? For you to be able to answer that question, that journey begins now. My hope is 20 years from now, you can say, granddaughter, grandson, sit down. These were the issues in our beloved Africa. These were the issues with black people. Together with my brothers and sisters, we came together. We pulled our financial resources together, and this is what we did. While the mission is not yet accomplished, this is where we left off. And this is where you, together with your brothers and sisters, need to come together and pick up where we left off. But we should also guarantee them two things. One, they will always have our shoulders to stand on. And secondly, we will always have their back. The journey to be able to answer that question to our children and grandchildren begins today. It is important that we speak with one voice. The rule of divide and conquer has been winning among us for far too long. The issue of a divided Africa, the issue of a divided people of African descent around the globe is an issue that we and only we can address and take care of. Naturally, you don't expect those who set out to divide us to do something about it. Until we participate in the building of Africa, sustainable Africa is never going to be built. Those who sought out to exploit Africa, they built an Africa that worked for them. The Africa they built never worked for us. So we must build the Africa that we want. And once we unite, the next thing is financial resources. We are not poor people by any stretch of imagination. To women I say, look at how many clothes, handbags, dresses, shoes in your closet that still have tags on. Can you imagine if everybody committed to $83 a month and we get 1 million people out of the over 300 million in the diaspora, just 1 million to commit to $83 a month. That's $1 billion a year. Now let's make it 5 million people. Let's make it 5 years, 10 years to perpetuity. How do you think the Jews got to be as powerful as they are now after Holocaust? They came together. They understood that sheer survival was in their unity. Not only unity physically, but also financial unity. They pulled their funds together and they have built a strong, powerful Jewish community. We have examples all around us. Ask for the voices of the Chinese diaspora loud and clear. Ask for the voices of the Indian diaspora, the Irish diaspora, German Americans, Italian Americans, loud and clear. But when you ask for the voices of the African diaspora, you might as well go to the graveyard. We are missing in action. We are waiting for somebody to come take care of our problems because we've been programmed to think that way. Examples that we see every day. Somehow, we don't have the energy to say, we can do it too. We are suffering from the disease of the legacy of slavery and the legacy of colonization. We are in the intensive care, my brothers and sisters. We have got to understand this. We have got to heal ourselves from this disease. Until we do, our ability to help ourselves is always going to be hindered. And that means we all must understand our history and the journey that we have been through. I feel very strongly that most of us, we're still in our slumber. We're still fast asleep. We continue to do some of the most stupid things as black people. You tell me why I get ignored by my own son at the airport when I want my son to help me with my luggage. A young boy who could easily be my son or my grandson. Because they are waiting for the British Airways flight that just landed. White people tip better. They are waiting to wait on the British people that are coming from London, and they ignore me. You tell me why I'm ignored at a restaurant because of the color of my skin, by one who looks like my own daughter, by one who looks like my own son. Tell me why I have a better chance of getting a contract in Africa if I have a white man as my partner, if I have a white man sitting next to me when I go for an interview. How insane is that? Tell me why. A black man will go out of business in a black neighborhood the minute a Chinaman comes in. Because we black people will start patronizing the Chinaman. We'll turn it around. Have a black man go to Chinatown. First of all, you're lucky to get a license to start a shop in Chinatown. But any luck should you open a shop in Chinatown, zero Chinese will patronize you. We know all those facts. Why is it that we can't behave like others do? Unity of purpose. My brothers and sisters, may I remind you that we're part of somebody else's strategy. Strategy designed to see to it that Africa and her children are forever defeated and dominated. Let us be the generation. Let's make a commitment that we are going to be the generation that's going to end this scourge. We are going to be the generation that's going to teach our children that we have been lied to. But we're not going to accept those lies anymore. Let's speak nothing but the truth to our children. We owe it to them. Let's teach our children our history. We got this. We can do this. Two things we gotta do. Unite and bring our financial resources together. All of it will work if we can heal ourselves of the legacy of slavery and the legacy of colonization. Once our minds are awoken, once we understand our history, once we understand the journey that we have been put through, the rest is easy. We can do this. We can do this. The beautiful, intelligent, sophisticated, highly adaptable, and total indestructible Africans, we can do this. Without a doubt. We got this. And we owe it to our children, grandchildren, and generations to come.
Now, in this today's video, I agree with Arikana Chihombori Kwao in trying to educate Africans on the value the continent has had over time and how it has been messed by the foreigners. Now, Africa was the cradle of mankind, and unfortunately, Africa has been reduced to be one, or rather the poorest continent across the globe. It is a very saddening situation that even Africans themselves have never seen the need to rise and castigate all these messes we have been put through. Now, before the missionaries came to Africa, or before the Western influences invaded our land, Africa had natural resources that was enough for the people of Africa, and no one was suffering. Even the God, they introduced their God to Africans, because long time ago our forefathers used to go to the mountain, pray to the superhuman being they believed in, and even rain could come down. It means that we have been subjected to a situation that even our cultures have been lost. Our culture have been eroded, and we have inherited the culture of the Western and the whites. It means that we don't know the value of our culture. Over time, we've never believed in ourselves. It is high time we take such advices that people like Chihombori Kwao is giving, because that is when Africa will move forward as a united continent, and that is when people will grow economically and be innovative enough to build one continent that is yearned to be, because Africa is a great continent. Africa has vast resources, but these people will never want even peace to be in countries that are promising. For instance, Congo has never had peace because of the kind of resources they have, minerals they have. The Western world wants to exploit all the minerals, is when they will be left to be free. Libya was on a trajectory of growth, and they wanted to achieve the best for the country. Muammar Gaddafi was the president of Libya, had a dream for the people of Libya, but what transpired was a menace and something that shocked the world, and Libyans are still regretting up to the moment. They've never had the stability they wanted their country to have. They were duped to believe that Muammar Gaddafi is their enemy, and right now they are seeing that Gaddafi meant well for the country. Gaddafi was someone who believed in one currency for Africa, a united and borderless Africa, which can even compete in the global trade. You know, currently Africa cannot compete in the global trade because we still depend on the dollar. We still depend on the foreign currencies for trade. It means we are building those Western worlds or Western countries at the expense of the people of Africa. So it is time to wake up. As Arikana Chihombori always said, it is time to wake up as Africans and build Africa, mean business for Africa. So I want you to tell us what you feel about this video. Also, if you're watching us for the first time, I request you to consider subscribing to this video, or rather to this channel. Thank you, and may God bless you.